What is loyalty? And what does it mean to the African family? How did a traitor like Mobutu live so long in the Congo after the killing of Patrice Lumumba? How did the backbiter Blaise Compaoré live so long in Burkina Faso after the murder of Thomas Sankara? They lasted because there is no black retribution for dealing a death blow to the black community. As a result, many fake breadfruits live among us, and like leeches, they depend on us to get popular. Then they use this popularity for personal gain by selling what we used to get them popular to the enemy. A few years ago, a man named Denham Jolly went on every community radio station, especially CIUT in Toronto, Canada, and literally begged the black community to support his quest to set up a community radio station in Toronto, since there was none. He asked everybody to write and call and fax the government to grant our community a radio station. The people responded positively, and a license was granted to Jolly in 2007. He then formed Flow 93.5 in Toronto. After a few years, when the station became very successful, Denham Jolly sold it to some white people and got rich. We have the same characteristic in Bob Johnson, who failed to realize the power of the media. So he sold the BET television, big BET TV. Him sell it to some white people for billions and then purchase a basketball team. What a short-sighted numbskull. What a greedy bastard. What a useless piece of protoplasm who used our community to get rich. We have Essence magazine in America, the Voice newspaper in England, the Black Pages in Canada. Everywhere we look, it seems we're surrounded by misfits and traitors who use the black race to get rich. When Berry Gordy established Motown in 1959, his intention was to use black singers to produce music, not black music, but music that everybody in the world could relate to. And he did. In no time, Motown produced some of the world's most eloquent, most persuasive singers and groups. And some of these singers, due to their musical genius, they still earn interest and royalties today, even though they were buried long ago. So with this vast catalogue of not only musical but historical significance created by black singers and groups, what did Berry Gordy do? He married a white woman and sold Motown to white people in 1998. The souls of our people was given away by this mindless entrepreneur to be turned into mincemeat for the oppressor. Maybe he took too much headshots when he was a boxer. Or maybe he was tortured in 1953 by the South Koreans who didn't believe he came from America to help them. They knew black folks in America needed the same help, so how could he give them something he didn't have? Now, getting rich can be okay. However, when it's time to sell, the buyer is never from our community. The end result of their actions, they know not, because they were not taught to think in our interest, in the interest of African people. So, in every case, it appears that our successful people were ready and willing to sell what we gravitate around to white folks. Instead of selling our personal information to a telemarketing company, they sold our culture, our meeting place, our community center. They sold our souls to those who have no interest in our development. As a matter of fact, the present reason for our development at this grade of humanity is these same white people who invaded our land and brutally interrupted our growth. We were at a much higher grade of existence before they came. They are the cause of our problem in the first place. The wealthy among us refuse to see the big picture. White folks don't want us to tell our own story, and that's why they buy every one of our successful media outlet. They then change the format and content, putting us right back where we started. Look at BET today. Black folks are portrayed as loyal buffoons, eagerly awaiting their turn to show how much they appreciate and want to emulate white society and their customs. So white folks take out the good performers after they purchase our media. They take out the good performers, the good writers, the good singers, the good ones. The ones who have the mentality of a Jackie Robinson. These mental pioneers were adopted, restructured, and then put on white TV, even prime time. Where is our integrity? In the year 2000, Samuel Taylor, a black man in the US Army, apologized to South Korea for poisoning their water supply in Seoul. He didn't do it. He couldn't even authorize it. It was authorized and conducted by white folks. As a matter of fact, it looked like he wasn't even born when the war was taking place in 1953. But he's the one who apologized to the South Koreans. What a disgrace on this young man who reached the big rank of colonel. With that rank, many would think he had a spine, that he would first resign instead of taking the blame on behalf of white folks who sat in the audience looking at him. Instead, he bowed and disgracefully took the blame. I wonder what his wife said to him on the drive home. I wonder if he still have a wife. Then we have a criminal officer, Lionel Nolan, a founding member of the Association of Black Law Enforcers in Toronto, who in August 2005 admitted at a town hall meeting before a crowd of 99% black folks that he practiced racial profiling on young black men when he was a police officer in Canada for 25 years. He said if he saw 7 white youths standing around, he would drive by. But if he saw 3 black youths, he would stop and search them, even though on most occasions they had nothing illegal on them, and if they did, it was usually a small amount of ganja. Nolan retired in 1998 and went back home to Nevis. While in Nevis, he wrote a book detailing his criminal acts against us and wants us to buy it. We should buy him something else. We also have another idiot named Dr. Raymond Notice. In July 2004, Dr. Notice was the mayor of Spanish Town in Jamaica. Instead of deporting Cristobal Colon, the Duke of Veragua, who is the 20th direct descendant of Christopher Columbus, yes, the same Christopher Columbus who murdered millions of people during his so-called discoveries in the Caribbean, Dr. Notice gave Cristobal the keys to Spanish Town as Cristobal celebrated the 500th anniversary of Columbus' 4th murderous trip to the Caribbean. Dr. Notice has obviously left his mind in Africa. Them deport Walter Rodney to Guyana. Them deport Abu Bakr to Trinidad. Them even deport numerous Haitians back to Haiti. It look like it's only we, the government, have strength for. In South Africa, we see the repeated brutality of white people against us. We see them abusing, torturing, and murdering us every day. And then we have a man named Nelson Mandela. He comes along, and like Jesus, he forgives white people of all their crimes. He's later seen dining, singing, and dancing with these killers. Why was there no value placed on the lives of those black people in Africa who were brutally murdered? Like the others named so far, Mandela was brainwashed by white folks who had brainwashed his parents using threats of murder and money. And in this case, it was the peace prize which he gladly shared with his enemy. Where was the love for his culture and his community? As a lawyer, Mandela's job was to brainwash the African people in South Africa to get them accepting the laws of Britain, their oppressor. Another way in which the oppressor paralyzes our people is to entice them to leave their homeland for the lands of the oppressor as soon as they complete their professional training. This is known as the brain drain. The lands of the oppressor are more than adequate to train their own staff. But taking those from Africa and the Caribbean reduce the professional environment in these places, which in turn result in various manifestations of disruption in the society. In 2007, in its objective to professionally destabilize Africa and the Caribbean, Canada appointed Jean Augustine as the Fairness Commissioner. But fairness for whom? As a black woman, her job was to welcome these black professionals like teachers, doctors and nurses who fly away from their countries, leaving their local citizens to suffer. She obviously have no problem welcoming these professionals on behalf of white people. These are professionals who receive their education paid for by the people they left behind. An education that will now undeservedly benefit the slave master's children. African countries and those in the Caribbean lose over $5 billion annually by training professionals who leave for overseas when the training is completed. It is so disgraceful that a Canadian scientist, Dr. Edward Mills, calls it a grave imbalance. Dr. Mills is chairman of global health at the University of Ottawa. He says rich Western countries, including Canada, are demolishing African medical systems and destroying African lives by continuing to lure away their healthcare workers. He said the problem is so bad that future active recruitment should be considered a criminal offense in international law. All the above people are completely useless in our community. They are turncoats in their big positions. Their interest was never centered on us. It was always on white people who they adore. We have a few more like them in our community. The irony is, when these bogus men and women attend black functions, they are well received and given awards of all kinds. What a shame. Based on what they have done and is presently doing that is detrimental to us, one would think they would be scared to face the black public, but they're not. The audience they face was put together by those who see them as mentors, those who would want to do the same thing. These lowlifers are just waiting in line to be rewarded instead of chastised, and this cannot continue. For every black man or woman who denigrate us in public, there should be a special place for them so they'll never make this wrong move again. There are many more of them out there that deserve to be dealt with, but let's move to some bigger fish who we usually hear about in Black History Month. So, welcome to February. It's Black History Month, where we highlight the achievements of our race and remember those who deserve to be remembered for their contribution to our struggle. It is good to remember what we went through and to discuss how to fix ourselves and our generation. However, we have to use the proper people to do this. If not, our generations will be worse off than the previous because they would not be equipped with the knowledge of who the enemy really is. We have a few people who get recognition but who are not deserving based on a fundamental error they all make, which cause all of their good work to be of no value to us. It was only valuable to the white man, which is why these men will get a memorial stamp or dollar printed in their name by the white man. When they get a statue erected in the white man's town or a street, we know they were completely useless to our liberation movement. People like Nelson Mandela fit into this category. Anytime a white government promotes or speaks kindly of any of our people, watch out. That person or organization is useless or was useless to our race. You will never find a coin, a stamp, a statue of Winnie in England, or Dessalines in France, or Lumumba in Belgium. Now, two primary people who are remembered in Black History Month are Bob Marley and Malcolm X. If these two men were totally on our side, Babylon would never put their picture on a stamp, a coin, or a street to remember them. Some Western cities even have a designated day. They are being honored because what they did was of more benefit to the white race than to the African, even though it appears to be the opposite.